Their obsession with Israel borders on pathology. When the facts are inconvenient and don't serve their agenda, they lie, knowingly, shamelessly, without hesitation. So much so that they ignore every other atrocity unfolding across the globe, just to fixate on us. No, and I'm not talking about your average Jew hater. I'm talking about the most trusted media outlets in the Western world. Those who have engaged us in a war over the truth. Hi, I'm Daniel Seaman, and you're watching Straight Up on JNS TV in our Jerusalem, Israel studios. Over the past 2 years, Israel's been fighting an existential war on 7 different fronts, from Gaza through Lebanon all the way to Iran. I'm sure you've heard of that. There's also an additional front that doesn't involve tanks or rockets and yet is just as critical. It is one Israel has been engaged in for many more years. It's what many now call the 8th front, the information front. This is the propaganda war, a relentless campaign focused not on just delegitimizing and denying Israel's right to defend itself, but questioning our very right to exist at all. There are many layers to this battle. And yes, the Israeli government has been criticized, often rightfully so, for its communication failures. I know those frustrations firsthand. I've lived them. I've worked inside the system my entire career. I've seen the gaps, the missed opportunities, the missteps, to say the least. But there's one aspect of the information war that is not Israel's fault, and that is the failure of the Western media to do its job fairly, accurately, and without bias. The media are failing at their job. I know this firsthand as well. I worked with them for over 30 years. I know how distorted the media lens can be. I wrote a whole book about this with Dr. Ron Schleifer, who I've interviewed here before. But even I am stunned at how far the media has deteriorated with its standards. They are considered the fourth estate, an essential pillar of democratic societies and countries. Their role is to inform the public, to provide the facts, the context, the clarity necessary for citizens to make educated decisions about the issues that shape our lives. But how can they fulfill that role when they reduce complex realities into simplistic binaries, good guys versus bad guys, oppressor versus the oppressed? They selectively choose what to report and what to focus on. They omit context and advance a narrative that is selective in its historical context. They ignore what does not fit the narrative they're trying to advance. This isn't journalism, and as we've seen, it is also dangerous. Because when you strip away the context, when you ignore history, culture, religion, and the psychological scars that shape entire peoples, you don't inform. You create an impression disconnected from the facts. And that incites. When you repeatedly apply coined, demonizing terms such as apartheid, colonialism, privilege, that are baseless and unfounded lies, completely unconnected to the particular circumstances, it only serves to inflame the public. The media appear to lack a basic understanding of the region's dynamics. They project their own cultural frameworks onto societies that operate by entirely different codes. But we expect more depth and insight from them. But they are chasing headlines and clicks, not the truth. For example, take the Gaza famine narrative. Back in August, headlines around the world screamed, "Famine confirmed." It was everywhere. But now, even UNICEF itself admits that the numbers never crossed the famine threshold. The original report used unweighted, misleading data. The numbers didn't lie, the narrative did. When caught with its failure, the media will then issue regrets and retractions, explaining how they were mistaken or worse, misled. Now, I can accept this, even respect their repenting. Who hasn't made mistakes before? We all make mistakes. We do, after all, learn from our mistakes. Or do we? It seems this does not apply to the mainstream media. The reason I have a problem with the media is that it is all a show. Because a week later, they're back at it again, quoting the same sources, repeating the same fallacies, as if nothing ever happened. And worse, as if they haven't fallen for it again and again and again for years. And by then, the damage is done. Just like it was with the Al-Dura incident, like the Jenin massacre accusation, just like it was with the Kfar Kana accusations before that, just like it was when the Church of the Nativity was assaulted by the PLO. These were incidents where the media accused Israel of doing horrible things only to be discredited later. leaning on the confirmation of biased sources and at times even terrorists themselves who exaggerate casualty numbers and feign atrocities. While Israeli sources and claims are always suspect and conditioned, while always holding Israel to a higher standard, applied to no one else under similar circumstances. And the same has been going on since October 7th. Accusations of bombing hospitals, of targeting churches, of murdering journalists, of starving civilians, of committing genocide. All libels, all discredited when examined seriously. But by the time the truth catches up, the lie has already run its course. This is what happens when mediated reality replaces actual reality. As Dr. Richard Landis, an expert on media bias, writes, we're fed a stable, repetitive, pervasive, and virtually inescapable stream of images and ideologies that create the illusion of shared understanding. But that illusion is often wrong. Context is everything. Leave it out and even the truth becomes distorted. So, settlers responding to provocation? That nuance disappears. Instead, we get a morality play. The powerful versus the powerless. Violent organizations are rebranded as resistance. Terror is whitewashed. And suddenly the story isn't about what happened. It's about who fits the preferred narrative. Even the mundane matters. A single omitted detail can flip the entire frame. For example, journalists here drive past signs warning Jews not to enter Palestinian areas because it is dangerous to their lives. This while they employ Arab staff from Judea and Samaria in their offices in Israel. They travel with them freely throughout Israel, but they can't take their Israeli camera crews into those same Arab areas. Do they tell you that? Do they even think of mentioning it to you? It is not only that they fail to uphold basic professional standards, they knowingly and deliberately fit political opinions into their supposedly objective reporting. This isn't just bias, it's selective storytelling. It's advancing a narrative that's stripped of historical context and moral clarity. But what's more frustrating is this: the media know exactly what they're doing. Those covering the events here are usually not rookie reporters parachuting into unfamiliar terrain. These are seasoned outlets who have been covering the Middle East for decades. They've seen the patterns. They know the players. So how can they still claim ignorance? They can't. They just hope that all of us are. And the result? A Western audience that is increasingly ignorant of the region's history, its realities, and its complexities. They're fed a diet of selective outrage designed not to inform, but on dictating a political position. We are getting an illusion of truth, and we deserve better. When truth is sacrificed for narrative, everyone loses. While they keep you fixated on the accusations they level against the Jews, real evil is lurking and slowly taking over in Africa, in Europe, and even in the United States. Yet, something remarkable is happening. Because as journalists fail, average citizens are stepping up. They're doing the research. They're exposing the truth. They're helping us understand what's really happening and how we're being manipulated. From independent analysts to grassroots investigators, people are refusing to accept the media package narrative. They're asking the questions the media won't. They're connecting the dots that journalists ignore. And they're reminding us that truth doesn't belong to institutions. It belongs to those who seek it. Like this truth posted from Gaza, where they claim there was a genocide and famine. They have the newest iPhones and luxury new cars. And look at the food and the iced coffee offered in the famine we are told of. Well, they say we rule the world. We can't even control Gaza, for God's sake. Once, when the media reported something, it became fact, even when it was not. Now people have the ability to expose and influence. You can share and distribute that truth, even when there are those who want to pervert, manipulate, and block it. Because we the people, we have the power. So as I said, we the people do have the power now. And by that I mean through the emergence of social media and all these different platforms, individuals have taken on the cause that journalists had done for a very long time. And especially with Israel, it's very necessary because, as I told you in my opening, that the media always doesn't give you the facts and the truth. And media is very simplistic when it comes down to it. And the people have been filling that in. So I thought, what better time than to talk to one of these, I don't even know how to describe it, influencers. There are many names for it. And some of you may know her. If you'll see her face, Dyan, who doesn't give us her last name for many reasons, because since she's been out there on social media, she's been under a lot of pressure. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this as well. And the reason I'm going to her is because she's not your obvious and usual Israeli supporter. She has a very fascinating story that she shares on her posts as well. So Dyan, thank you for being with us. Thank you for making the time to address the questions and describe your experiences as being somebody who's a truth teller.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So how do we describe you? How would you put your work and your effort there?
Okay, so it's a bit of a. I'm gonna try to condense my life story in like 30 seconds here. But so basically, I was born on an island in the Philippines as a Catholic, right? And I was transplanted into California involuntarily, so my parents could find a better life in the U.S. Um, so growing up in California, I started to despise religion. I explored other faiths. And I just, listened to like my inner guidance. So I went to yoga and then I got into Kundalini. And I even at one point converted to Islam because I was studying Sufism. So in my time in California, I developed like a hatred for the West. So I traveled outside of the US for a while. And it was, and I still had, I was anti-Zionist by default. This is just, the default for all of my friends. Everyone parroted it that Zionists controlled the world. And I didn't know any Jewish people around me to tell me that wasn't true. So I just went along with it. And I found myself in the Amazon jungle. And this is like a pivotal moment, I think, in my life, because this is, where I was in a hippie commune, and one day I saw like a Jewish man being surrounded by these fellow anti-Zionists, these fellow older hippies, and they were accusing him of, well, not him specifically, but they were just, trying to tell him that Zionists controlled the world. And at that moment, I saw him break down and cry. And I thought to myself, this is one of the best people I've ever met. Like, how is this man crying and breaking down in front of me? And that's when my cognitive dissonance really started to happen. And it really disturbed me to a point where I started asking, like, how was Israel created? That was the first question I asked. So I went down this rabbit hole. I did a lot of research. I didn't know, I had no idea how Israel was created. I didn't know about the history until like, oh, it really blew my mind. And I started to see that it was, the Arabs who were always, violent towards Israelis and Jews in the Middle East. And I started to see like my perspective flip completely 180 to see that, oh, wait, there's only 7 million Jews in the West, and I mean, in the Middle East. And why are there, surrounded by 400 million or so Muslims and Arabs just bullying them constantly? So I found myself living in Mexico, where I am now. And I started to appreciate life in the US a little bit more, because sometimes you have to like
So
experience
maybe
the
we should send all these different hippies to the Amazon for a while. They'll come back with a deeper appreciation for the United States.
yeah. And so it was here when October 7th happened. I was here when October 7th happened. And all of a sudden, I started to see all my friends posting vile anti-Jewish propaganda on social media. People I've known, people I've eaten with and had barbecues with. And it was just really bizarre. So I started to see the propaganda and the blood libels really ramp up. And it reminded me of Nazi Germany. And so I felt like my entire life path led me to this purpose, and all the knowledge that I've gathered in my own exploration of other faiths and just realizations, it informs the content that I make now. And so
Well,
that's what
let me pause for a moment here. When you started doing all this studying, you didn't post about it. You just got the information for yourself to educate yourself, and you
yeah.
were not posting it before that.
No. No. So I was really curious. So, because we have free will, I decided I was like I was really interested in it. I was really interested in all the dynamics that was happening in the Middle East, and I just didn't understand why truth was so distorted. And the history that I learned was so distorted.
Did you go to media outlets to get information, to follow the news, or is it all just checking sources, etc.?
Yeah, it was I went on YouTube actually. And I started digesting all of Corey Gilshesher's videos where he goes on the ground interviewing Israelis and Palestinian Arabs. And I started to see that, I remember feeling like, oh, I was siding with the Palestinians at first, but then I was really like 100 videos in, I was like, wait a minute, Israelis are like saying really logical things here. I don't see them as violent or whatever it is that they accuse Israelis of being. So I started to dig into it more. There was so much I was learning, but even after October 7th, I learned even more because I was diving more deeply into it, like all these like little nuances that people don't really know about. So, I mean, I started to realize too that, it's not just like violent jihad that is um, affecting Jews and Israelis. It's actually nonviolent jihad that was more prominent to me. There's like political jihad, financial jihad, cultural jihad, and education, infiltrating the educational institutions was a major part of their plan. And so I started to see that and I was like, wow, the Jewish people are really getting bullied by and drowned out by the masses who have somehow jumped on this train.
That's interesting. You mentioned that you got your information from Corey, and this sort of coincides with something I say in my monologue in the opening, that every one of us should be sharing the knowledge that we have, because you never know where it's going to reach. If back 12, 15 years ago, we didn't have access outside of what we were taught in schools or
Yeah.
universities or the media, now there is tremendous amounts of information coming out there that, and you didn't go to the historical, you went to an average person just doing personal interviews and showing the realities, not getting into the whole history and background. And that brought you to search for more and gave you insights into what is happening here. And you hadn't been here before that, or had you?
No, not really. I was never really political, none of this. And so, the conversations that I would see, like in Corey's videos, for example, I if there was something I didn't know, I would research it. So I kind of supplemented it that way so that I would be more informed. Um, yeah, and it also like, debating with my friends after October 7th, it really opened my eyes that people were just largely ignorant and they had no idea. And so I had gone to Israel twice now, and even all the research that I did, all the videos that I consumed, it was nothing compared to actually being on the ground to see it for myself. And that's when I realized, oh, Israel is actually multicultural. That was like a culture shock to me to see that Israel was multicultural, and as a woman, I can just walk freely. And, it was great. It was really like a bastion of the West in the Middle East, Western values in the Middle East, I should say. Even though I do know that Israel has their own culture, I just felt like, wow, this is like, I would rather live here than any Arab country surrounding it. Like, to me, that was like a no brainer. And I started, it's not just that, but like, the oppression of women that I was seeing in the Arab countries, that's systemic. It really opened my eyes to seeing that contrast in Israel, like to see that women were, walking around freely. They were able to speak their mind. They could travel however they wanted. And so I saw truth unfold before my eyes when I went there.
That's interesting. And you raise this. I worked for 30 years with the Israeli government, working with media, but also with what we called public diplomacy, or I hate the word hasbara, which is basically explaining. We're the only country in the world that feels it has to explain itself. But two things we noticed years ago was, first off, The personal stories and the personal experiences is what I always encouraged Israelis to do. Don't get into all the details and all the different things. Yes, there's a place for that, but first give your personal insights. Make it personal so people can understand. But more than that is, and one of the things we tried to do, but there's a limit to how many you can actually bring here. We tried to encourage people to come and see Israel for themselves. Get that experience. Don't believe us. Don't believe the media. Don't believe the government officials. Don't believe Israelis. Come and see it for yourself. And so you sort of confirm that to a degree, because I say to a degree because we know that there are also others coming here. And for example, the journalists, and they're being escorted and being under the influence of the Arabs who live in Judea and Samaria, and they're not getting the full picture for them. And one of the things that bothered me, for example, was their tendency to sort of idolize, or they call it the racism of little expectations that oh, we can't expect more of them. That's what
Yeah.
their community is like, and how can you combat something like that?
That's a good question because a lot of people are indoctrinated to see through that lens of oppressed versus oppressor. And so even myself, I had gone through that. So I was able to really see that people just have it wrong, and they have to come to that point for themselves. Like, they can't be made to see it. And unfortunately, there are people who have gone to Israel and they would post in social media that it's an apartheid
Hmm.
state and all of this. I just didn't see that, so I don't know what it is that is causing them to really, it's like confirmation bias. They see, I don't know what they see, honestly, to come up, to stick with that conclusion and run with that conclusion. So it's hard to, I think it's up to the individual, to see it for themselves, and to like really like be open-minded enough to, and be curious enough to know that maybe they're wrong. So it's a hard call. I can't say that, oh, give them more facts. Like, that's not going to open their eyes. It's like, what they need to do is to really, like what I do, for example, is I just speak my truth on social media, hoping that people would get it, because if there's no pushback to their lies, it's going to keep growing and growing. And so that's what I feel like my role is that I just say what I've learned, I say what I've seen. And hopefully it comes across, the screens.
Yeah, one of the things I try to tell those who are doing work on behalf of Israel is to take into consideration that there may be 15% of the world that are positive towards Israel. There may be 25 to 30% that are automatically on the other side for different reasons. It could be religious, it could be because they're Muslims or Arabs, etc. But there's a large majority of people, and we can all look at ourselves and look at different things happening around the world. We really don't know what is happening there. And these are the people we have to be directing our efforts towards.
Yeah.
Not engaging in debates and discussions, but addressing, and in this case, it's not always what you say, it's how you present these things and how you bring it to their understanding. And you've been doing it in several different ways. One is telling your personal experience, but you also do a lot of historical background checks. And what raises your interest on a particular topic? Because every few days you post on something else. There's nobody orchestrating it. It's what you feel is important and of interest.
Yeah, like going back to my inner guidance, I think I just get divine inspiration, honestly. Like, I just get an idea and I'm just like, I'm feeling it. So I, I sit down and I write it out and I do a little research, and it just comes together like magic, honestly. So that's, nobody's telling me to write these things. Or sometimes I just get inspired and I just respond to that inspiration. And that's what, that's how I generate my content.
Did you have people responding to your posts? I'm sure positively, but you also experienced the negative side of it?
Of course, like, and then, and that's when I realized, I was like, oh, you can't really change the minds of these people who are just locked in. They're locked, and it feels rabid to me. It almost feels like a mind virus, like I'm just like, there's not amount of truth, and there's you can try so hard to try to convince them, but if they're locked in a particular indoctrination or mindset or ideology, it's not going to change their minds. So for me, there's, what I've seen is that there's a lot of people who just don't know. They don't know. And when they don't know, they scroll on social media, and maybe they'll see like something about Israel and Palestine, and they'll just go with that because that's what they see. So my idea too, and that's why I'm on TikTok, even though I don't like TikTok, I just upload all my videos there. I don't even respond to the comments half of the time. And so I just know that if I get the word out there on Twitter, on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, so I'm on all the platforms, and YouTube has suspended me, but I'll get to that.
Oh
I'll
my
fix that.
God. Yeah.
But I've gotten suspended in all media platforms. I'd had to restart all of my accounts. But it's just like, that's the idea, is just to keep speaking your truth, and hopefully like it'll help, with the narrative. I'm not trying, I don't have like a goal, like I must educate the masses. Like that's never in the back of my mind, but I just, create what I feel is right.
You had these platforms before, or did you use these platforms in order to get your knowledge out there?
I would say partly. I mean, I've had these platforms for a long time. I've always kind of spoke my mind about certain things, mostly about spirituality, or I share like my life story and my travels, but that was it. I was never.
Did did
Uh-huh.
did you see it explode suddenly when you started writing and
Yeah.
talking about the topic of Israel and the war going on? Did it?
Yeah, and honestly, it was a little bit scary at first because I didn't. Most of my friends were anti-Zionists and leftists and Marxists or what have you, and so I got a lot of pushback. And that was really painful, at first. Like I would say, the first couple of months, I was afraid to like really speak my mind, and I would do it very subtly and gradually. But then afterwards, my post started getting picked up by pro-Israel accounts as well, and so I got a lot of support, and that really helped. So that's why I go on Instagram, and I just like all the videos that I see on my feed that are pro-Israel, because I know how much that support really means and how it boosts up the algorithm as well.
Well, that's how I discovered you. You popped up on my screen once, and I said, "You don't look like the average, what I would expect an Israeli supporter to be." And I listened, and the stuff was phenomenal. And I started following you, and you were excellent in the content that you were giving out there. And so I'm saying that we will share the links to your different Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, or X as you call it, or they call it nowadays. So we'll make sure that's shared. And anybody engaging with Israel and doing that, you're giving them great advice to tell them, share other people's content. You never know who it's going to reach and how it's going to affect them. And if you feel you have something, also get it out there. Don't be afraid, because I think you're explaining something that I don't think there's one of us who has not experienced, whether it's politics in the United States or in Israel, or certainly the Israel-Arab conflict. We've all lost friends, sometimes even family, because of
Yes.
people's outrage over the fact. And
Mm.
I haven't seen anything, I won't say controversial. There was nothing mean or derogatory in the stuff that you post. And most of us don't do that. And yet there are those who are offended by just mentioning things that they disagree with.
Right, exactly. And it goes back to that rabid response from these people. It just feels ravenous, but like I feel like, I speak the language of the other side. I know what it's like to be in a Muslim's head. I know what it's like to be in a leftist's head. And so I try to, try to
I
speak
noticed
their
you said
language.
head and not brain, but we'll keep that for some other time.
Yeah. I try to speak their language so that they would understand, but that's, the subtle things. And I also like recognize, I try to see like the patterns and the waves of of like the dynamics happening, and it is overwhelming. And I honestly, I'm just like, I don't know how the Jewish people do it. I don't know how they do it. But I started to realize something, that so in my search for truth, I ended up in, surrounded by Jewish people, secular or religious even, and I could see that all my research that I've done, there's like something intangible here that I think a lot of Jewish people need to hear, is that resilience and truth and their love for life is embedded in them. They embody it naturally. Most Jews, anyways, right?
Yeah.
There are some that are
Yeah,
lost.
yeah, we have them
But
all.
yeah. And so to me, that was inspiring. I'm also learning a lot of things from Jewish people that wasn't from my culture, from my background. And it just blows my mind every single day. I'm just like, how did they do it? How did they stay so strong? How did they stay so steadfast on truth when the whole world is just trying to devour them, So
I spoke about this last week in my show back then, talking about the biblical story of Abraham and how it reflects on us these days. And I said maybe it's in our genes. I don't know, because it seems like every generation, and when Passover we say that in every generation they rise to destroy us, and we can defeat them because God is on our side. Who knows? I tend to say that if it's been going this way for so long, there must be something to it. So I don't argue with the realities that I see. I also think that maybe humor is part of it. We've been able to divert things to a lot of cynical humor. But sometimes we deal with very serious issues, and it's not that simple. It's not that humorous. So in this case, people like yourself who see these things, it also reminds us of who we are and what we're doing. And as you said, you saw a lot of people being grateful for it. I was very grateful for your content and for it coming out there, because it does serve to strengthen us and give us that, because it's not only for us. We're carrying a message for the world, for humanity.
exactly. And that's what I discovered to learn too, that the Torah is not just a book, it's a living code. It's embedded in the Jewish DNA, in the Jewish soul. And so I just started to really realize that recently. And that's why I speak the way I do, because I feel like that those memes where they say like protect, whenever someone does something good, it's like protect them at all costs. That's how I feel right now about the Jewish people. And so I feel like I'm just trying to play my part, and I didn't do it on purpose, and landed on my lap. And so I'm just going along with it. Like every day, every morning I wake up, I get inspiration to do a video, and I do it.
Well, I can compare again to the biblical story. There's Ruth, the Moabite, who she joined and supported the Jewish people and gave the support. And she ended up being the grandmother of the greatest kings that we had here, the grandmother of King David, and then of Solomon. So who knows where this is going to lead? God has greater plans, I guess. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, these are just ancient energies playing out, Isaac and Ishmael and all of this stuff. Like I also try to study like what's behind it beyond like history and politics, but like I totally see that this is like a replay of a lot of like the ancient energy. So there's we can also look back at those stories and see like how it played out to kind of predict what would happen, because Ishmael in the end ends up reconciling with Isaac when they bury Abraham, their father. So they found this like common ground, their source. So I don't know how it's going to play out in the modern context, but that's a little hope, that I hope to see happen.
Diane, I could have asked you for some last word, but I think you summarized it perfectly with what you just said and giving us this hopeful outlook. Again, I want to thank you not only for being here, not right now, but also on my show, but also for everything you're doing, all your efforts. And I hope to see you again here in Israel next time. I didn't see you when you've been here in the past. I hope to have the opportunity which I hope you will have as well as coming back here, and the strength and fortitude to continue doing everything that you're doing. I can say I'm sure that I'm speaking in the name of most of our viewers. There are a few of them who I'll find it necessary to be critical and criticize, but for those who are here for the support of Israel, modestly say I speak in their name and thanking you for everything you're doing, and that those looking for you will put the links to your platforms that they can see and join you. And thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you, and, for having me, and it's quite an honor. I just considered myself like a little voice in social media, but it was actually the Jewish people who constantly remind me daily, your voice is important because you're non-Jewish and you're speaking from the outside looking in. And that's when I was like, okay, that's giving me, you know, inspiration to just keep going. So
Thank you very much, and thank all of you who've joined us for this conversation, whether Jewish or non-Jewish, and thank our non-Jewish friends as well for being supportive of the State of Israel. And toda rabba, thank you, and I'll be with you all next week once again on Straight Up here on JNS TV.
awesome. Thank you.